Hello, fellow people of the Earth. I am Derry50 from Untitled Productions, and today I'm starting my complete starting Java tutorial. So, in this tutorial, I'll be teaching the very basics of Java. I'll be going at a fairly slow pace, not because you're stupid, just because you're learning a completely new thing, and it can be, can be hard to learn. And I mean, there's different. I do different pace tutorials. One tutorial that I did that was fairly fast paced was the bucket plugin tutorial for inv backup. It was fairly fast paced, and I got a lot of comments saying that they want me to slow down. But I think instead of slowing down and having boring videos where I continuously go on about things that I probably repeat later in Java tutorials, I thought of just making a Java tutorial that people can watch before they watch those types of tutorial videos. So. Anyway, today we're going to be setting up our workspace and learning some basic things about how to get started in coding. So, to start, you want to go to eclipse.org right here, and then you go to Downloads. And Eclipse is a Java IDE that is probably the only one I ever use, and it is just amazing. It has all the features possible, has plugins, and all the stuff that we're going to get to and learn, and it's generally very simple and easy to use too. And it's also having problems loading, which is apparent. Okay, there we go. So Java IDE for Java developers, what you're going to want to get. Java EE developers for web applications, you can get that too, but we're going to get the IDE for Java developers. And just download that, and it's going to download. Alright, so once you download it, it should be like this. What I'm going to do is just, let's see, actually, yeah, we can just right click, extract here, on your desktop or anywhere you want. And there we go, it's extracted, so we can delete that now. And if we open this, as you can see, we have everything here, and then we have the Eclipse application. Now, another thing you want to create, if you want to be very organized, you can have different workspaces. For the sake of this tutorial, my workspace is located in GitHub. Now, every episode, I'll be adding another folder to the GitHub online. So if you go to, hold on a second, if you go to github.com/Derry50, you can see my account, and then you just click on Runecode's tutorial series, and there'll be folders with tutorials in them, and you can download, you can clone the project and download the tutorials, each tutorial, and pretty much there'll be a workspace for every tutorial that you can just use. So, for example, if you just downloaded the episode 1 workspace, which you shouldn't if you want to learn the stuff in this episode, only if you're lost, you can launch Eclipse, and then you set the workspace directory to that workspace, and it's going to create all the stuff for me right now, but it'll load the current workspace in there with all the stuff that I had set up in there. But today we're going to learn some very basics, and you probably will not end up having to clone the workspace. So, when you open Eclipse, you'll have your package explorer. This is just going to be wherever all of your Java projects are. Then you have your main coding window, which is of course currently empty. Outline and task list, you don't have to worry about that now, you can just close that out. You have problems. This is where, if any problems are occurred, you can see a description of them here in a nice little grid format. You have Java doc, I won't get to that. It's pretty much just Java doc is pretty much explanation of code. You don't have to get to that yet, anyway. And a declaration is your declaration console. So anyway, I'm going to create a new Java project. I'm just going to call this episode 1, because there really isn't another name for it right now. And under episode 1, we have our source folder and our JRE system library, which contains all of the necessary JRE requirements. Now let's create a new package under episode 1. And for package names, if you have a you don't want to have a package that is called like episode 1 for that many things. As you can see, I mean, it's just not good. So my package, and I don't want you to use the same package name. Is going to be com.rootograph.tutorials I have the runecraft.com domain name. Now, if you don't have a runecraft.com or any domain name of your own, you can use your email. So for me, my email is Marcus at marcusman.com. Or you could even do com. I think it's like Gmail or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, mine's com.runecraft.tutorials episode 1. And there's my package, and then I can create a new class, and this is going to be our main class. I'm just going to call this package episode 1, or this class episode 1.class. When it's first created, you'll just have a little blank class here, and so I have to close out my other Eclipse project here. And here, sorry, it's annoying. I don't know why I had that open. Anyway, here, as you can see at the top, you have your package, and Eclipse does all this stuff for you, which is pretty nice. It creates it. If you were coding in like Notepad or anything, you have to declare the package up here, which is com.runecraft.tutorials at episode 1, and public class episode 1, and this is the main, just everything that contains within the classes within these two curly brackets. So, first thing we want to create is the main class, the main void. So, there are many methods in Java. You have a public void method. So a void method, hold on a second. So let's just create a method called void return integer string integer string. Now what this method will do, and we'll make this a public, this is not a void method. This is a public int. So this method is supposed to return an integer. Now this is a method. This is what a method is. And you can have methods like public boolean return boolean, and then public string return string, and then yeah. So all of these right here require a return statement. So, for example, this return integer will simply take part in the integer class, and what it will do is it will it'll return integer dot get integer, or no, parse int integer string. So, in Java, a string is just a set of letters. So a string, by the way, this is a comment. Double slashes are comments, double forward slashes, and they're not actually deprecated in the code. So a string is just like a set of letters, a normal set of letters, and numbers. An int would be a set of numbers, and then a double, which we'll get to later, is a set of numbers that include decimals, very long integers. And a double can contain like fractions that go on forever and stuff like that. So an integer is just a normal number, 0 to 0 up. It can contain negative numbers and all that. Double is long with a decimal point, but you can have a decimal point in an integer. You can only in a double. Boolean is can either equal true or false, and that's pretty much it. It can only equal true or false, and you can set these in your code. Of course, you can set all of these in your code. Did I miss any? I don't think so. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're using the integer class, which is a main one of the it contains several. It's java.lang.integer. It contains several methods that are used to do different things with integers. And in this case, we're parsing a string to an integer. So in this case, if the string is a number, it will parse the string to an integer. So if the string is an integer. Now, one thing you probably want to do with this is definitely not the best thing to do, because you want to make sure that the string is an integer first. So you want to do like if integer dot parse int integer string does not equal null, return integer dot parse int integer string. and you actually want to do it would be a try statement in this case, but I kind of wanted to, the reason I did that is because I wanted to explain what null is. And if you go on the end here, null will be returned if the integer cannot be parsed. I should say the string cannot be parsed. So if integer.parseInt integer string does not parse correctly, and actually return an exception, but I don't know, it won't return null, but it'll return an exception. We'll get to later. But null pretty much equals nothing. So if you're accessing a method that has a value that it can't access itself, it will return null. And null is just completely nothing. And one of the most overseen errors in Java is a null pointer exception. And that's an error that you'll get a lot, and it'll most likely be annoying to fix because they're generally very vague. That's why it's nice to debug a lot and get all your stuff done. By the way, this is probably going to be the most boring episode of the Java tutorials. After this, we'll hopefully get to some more stuff. I just have to explain the basics of Java. So, in this case, it's implying that the integer is an actual string, and it'll parse it to an integer. And then this boolean here, this will return a boolean. I don't really know what to do for that. We can just do return true, and that will return true for the boolean. And for this, we can return a string. Strings are contained with quotes, and the string it returns is as-div. So yeah, or actually we'll return hello world, because why not? That's like the most overused phrase in Java. So now, for a normal application to run, as you can see when we run this application, nothing's actually going to happen. See, because it says, if you see that error right there, selection does not contain a main type. For a Java application to run, it requires a main type in the main class. So we're going to create a void, and I have to talk about voids. So a void in Java is another type of method, and this, instead of returning something, just does something. So public void do something. For example, has no return setting, but just does something. So for example, if you have, let's say, integer, or you have int I equals 0, this is a defined variable in our main class here. For do something, we can make I equal to 50, and then we can ask for int. And this is very methods can contain other variables that they ask for in the in these two parentheses after the method. So, for example, in this return integer method, we had string integer string, and we had to define it as a string. So it's whenever we access this method, we have to give it a string. So, for example, in return boolean, we can do return integer, and then we can add a little string in here and say as-div, or like, well, I guess it has to be an integer, so we'll do 2. So we access this method with the string, with a string, and we add the string equal to 2, and that's the integer string. So that's an example of defining methods. So for do something, we can ask for an integer, for example. So we can do we can define this as an integer, and defined integer is the name of the variable that we're creating that's being asked for. So whenever we access this method, it will require a defined integer. And then if we separate this for a comma, we can actually add defined integer 2, or whatever you want. It doesn't have to be, of course, named that, but we're asking for 2 variables now. So now we can make the I, or we'll just name this integer, lowercase. We can make integer equal to defined integer plus defined integer 2. So now these 2 integers that we were asking for the void, all the void did was it set the integer variable that we defined in this class to defined integer plus defined integer 2. So we could add this to, we could I guess have this as add integers, public void add integers into defined integer 2, and it just adds, it makes the main integer equal to defined integer plus defined integer 2. And if we had 2 integers, we could once again, we can access this by add integers, and as you can see, if I create that, it's going to say that I don't have the necessary arguments. It requires an integer and an integer, so we can just go like 4 or 5 and 3 or whatever, and the reason it was not allowing me to do that was because it was below the return statement of this class, but I'm currently accessing the void with the integer 5 and the integer 3. For the and the defined integer, the first one here would be equal to 5, and the defined integer 2 would be equal to 3 once this method is called. You can't put anything after the return statement of a method because that's when the code is stopped for that method. And for a void, you can actually type in return to stop a method, and anything after that method will not be accessed, and we'll say remove because you can't do anything. But for a void, you can return, and return pretty much just means stop the code right there. Stop right there. Yeah, it's not really. There's rare cases in which you use that. But yeah, as an example of some asked variables that are asked for. Now let's get on to main methods, and once again, we can't run this program yet. So up here at the top, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the top. You can do this code in any order you like. We're going to add a main method. So public void main, and main methods usually usually return a selection of strings. These are the arguments that run the program, and then we won't worry about these quite yet. But we just kind of want there to be a main method. Now, if we run this application, it will actually well, it won't work because we don't have anything in the main type. But for this main type, what we can do is we do system.out.println return string. So what we're doing is we're printing a line to the console which is equal to the string that's returned here, which will be hello world. Alright, so now if we run this application, we'll say that, hold on, let me figure that out. I'm sorry, I made a stupid mistake. Has to be static void main, and static pretty much makes it inaccessible. It makes it not part of this class. Whenever you call a static method, so I can make this a static boolean, return boolean, it's not actually part of a class anymore. It's part of a static. It's not even part of anything. But as you can see, it's not letting me access return string anymore because it's not static. It's not part. It's part of a class that we won't have access to. So I want to do public static string return string, and that'll make it so we can use it. Now if we run this application, it'll just print to the console hello world. So yeah, that's pretty much what this does right now. Not much, just printing out hello world. So yeah, and what we can do instead of having this as static, we can define this as a new class, and this is where we're going to get into class constructors. So every class has to have its own constructor. So public, or it doesn't have to, but it's nice to. So for example, we can make it so integer 0, which I like to put all my variables at the top of the class like that, and then just separate everything out. But we can make it so that integer is equal to 0. But now when we start this program, and this is how you create a class constructor. A class constructor is like a method, except it just constructs the class and it doesn't have any return outcome. So public episode 1 is what this would be, because that's what the class name is. So this is the class constructor. Whenever this class is called, this method will be called. So, and let's say that this class requires an integer. We'll make that integer required integer, whatever. And then we can make integer, which is the variable we defined again, equal to required integer. Alright, so now, in our main method here, which is actually not part of this class, I know it's actually in code part of the class, but in the actual Java application it's not part of the class. We can define episode 1, and then we're defining a new variable here, and the variable is this class. Episode 1 is equal to new episode 1 3. So episode 1 is equal to a new episode 1 class instance of this class, and it required the integer, so we made it 3. So because this class is static, we have to define it as a new instance of the class, and everything we run in this class will be part of that instance of the class. So now we can just do episode 1 dot return string. And return string is not static, but it returns hello world. So anyway, that's how you deal with constructors, methods, and all the basic stuff in Java. Very basic stuff. Next episode we'll be getting into creating applications, JFrames, applications you can actually go through, and even getting into some dependencies. So anyway, thank you for watching. Once again, if you got lost any part of this tutorial you probably shouldn't have, you can go to github.com/dirty50